Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm working with Yarnspirations to take a closer look at Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie. This is a fantastic yarn and one of my favorite cotton yarns to use for all sorts of purposes. It comes in over 20 colors, and we'll take a closer look at it today together. Okay, here we have two beautiful coordinating shades of Scrubby Smoothie, and I wanted to point out that the solids and the stripes, or multicolored, I should say. I don't believe they're self-striping, but they're multicolored. There is a slight difference in the yardage and weight here. Let's see if I can bring it up. The solid colors are 3.5 ounces and 153 yards. And here we've got one of the multis. It is 3 ounces and 131 yards. And you can see from the picture, there's a little bit of striping here, particularly with knit, but I don't think you get quite as much of a striping effect with crochet. In fact, we'll take look at a couple of swatches here together. Before I do that, though, I just want to point out a couple other things. This is a medium weight yarn, the yarn symbol 4, also known as a worsted. So in UK terms, that would be like a 10 or a 12 ply. And they recommend an eye hook and a 5mm knitting needles, but of course you should follow whatever pattern you're using and play with the hook size and see what the fabric looks like. So this one is lavender, isn't this pretty? And this one is popsicle brights, and I think they just go really beautifully together, but of course there's lots of different colors to mix and match with this yarn. Now, if we take a look at a couple of swatches here, here's one of the multis, and unfortunately I removed the label. I was just playing with the stitch pattern. You can see how it works up in crochet. This one was sort of a offset fan stitch that I was playing with, and you can see how really beautifully those colors all come together here in this multi right here. Now, how does it slide on the hook? Let me pull up another swatch I've been working on here from my bucket on my lap. That's what you hear knocking around on here. There we are. So this is just a simple swatch of double crochets. And we've got an eye hook here, so a little bit bigger. And you can see it just works on the hook really beautifully. Cotton yarn like this does tend to split a little bit, but I didn't notice it splitting particularly with this yarn. And it frogs really well. You can see the yarn is still nice and smooth. And it's really consistent throughout. I've used several colors now. I've been playing with knitting and crocheting with it, and all the different colors I have found to be very consistent in weight. There was no thin or thick spots. Everything has just been really, really beautifully consistent from color to color. There have been, I want to say in all the skeins I've used, which at this point is probably 10 different skeins, I have found one knot. So that's pretty good, I would say. That's not too bad at all. And there are, the other thing I want to point out, there are dye lots though. So if you're making a multi-skein project, you'll probably want to buy enough right up front. Now I want to show you two squares that I crocheted using this yarn. I held 2 strands of Scrubby Smoothie together, red and white, as you can see, and just crocheted them in 2 identical squares. Now this one has a stitch marker so that I can tell them apart. But what I did after I made these squares was I set this one aside, and I actually threw this one in the washer and the dryer. And you can see that that yarn did not run one little bit. And I know for a lot of people, myself included, that's one of my number one concerns when I try a new 100% cotton yarn, especially, if it's a kitchen type cotton like this is. I really worry about the red, especially bleeding onto the other colors. You can see this didn't bleed at all. I just did a simple cold water wash with my regular detergent. We use a free and clear kind, and then I threw it right in the dryer, and it's beautiful, and it didn't even shrink up. If anything, I'd say it may have bloomed a little bit. The swatch seems to have gotten just that little bit bigger than the original. I don't know if you can see, just the tiniest bit bigger there. It's also a little bit softer. Not that it wasn't soft before. Actually, that's one of the things I love about this yarn is how soft it is right off the skein. It's just a delightfully soft cotton. But then after washing it, it was even softer. Now, I'm looking down my list of questions and things I want to cover. And one other note about this yarn. When I was crocheting with it, it did shed a little bit. So if you're like me, you tend to wear a lot of black, you're crocheting with white yarn, you might have a little bit of yarn shedding while you're crocheting. But after I washed this swatch, I didn't, of course, uncrochet it and recrochet it, but you can see I'm not getting any fuzz now that it's been through the washer. So that's something to think about too. While it sheds a little bit while you're crocheting with it, and I think most cotton yarn does, most natural fibers do, after washing it, I'm not getting any fuzz on my clothes from it at all. So that's just really reassuring too. So if you wanted to use this for wearables, a shawl, something, maybe a cowl or even a hat, then you could absolutely do that and not worry about it shedding off onto your clothes. So that's really happy to see too. So here's the swatch I've been knitting on. This colorway is called Waves. There we are. See if we can get that. There we are. There, it's in focus. Isn't that pretty? And I just really love the way this is working up. So you can see it really, whether or not you're going to get a striping effect is going to depend, I think, on each specific colorway. You'd really have to kind of experiment. I've just been making a shorter swatch here. You can see I'm not really going to get a whole lot of striping with the whites, but maybe I could do some color pooling. You'd really have to play with this yarn and play with the stitches, but you can see, I was looking at this one, and most of the time when I get to the white, I'm only getting 4 stitches. This is just stockinette knitting right here. Most of the time when I'm hitting a section of white, though, I only get 4 stitches. So that tells me there's a possibility that you could get some sort of color pooling with this, but again, you'd really have to experiment with it. But I'll just show you really quickly how well it works on the needles. These are just Susan Bates, size 5mm, US 8s. And I know a lot of people don't like to knit with cotton. Cotton just seems to be a little bit more popular with crocheters in general. But I think knitting with cotton is really lovely. I like knitting washcloths just as much as I like crocheting them. And frankly, I think knitting them is a great way to learn new knit stitches, since I am a relative beginner at knitting compared to crocheting. I feel a lot more confident in my crochet knowledge than my knitting knowledge, but you can see it really does work beautifully on the hook, and I think it really creates a gorgeous fabric, whether it's knit or crochet. I think you're really going to enjoy using Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie. And here is the Red Heart Santa Cloth Dishcloth, which is a pattern I designed using Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie for Yarnspirations.com. I combined Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie with a bit of Red Heart Scrubby cotton for this pattern to make the great beard and other details, so you can get this pattern on Yarnspirations.com. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.